uh, corresponds with the 11th zone of thought in the mind, where the guy becomes a live wire. He just really wants to get people to understand his concept of life. He could be a dictator. He could be a comedian. He could be a politician who's not a dictator. Okay, but he finds some way to express his concept of life to others and to bring them on board. Um, but then the eye of the storm is the calmest part of the storm. That 12th, and it corresponds with that 12th sphere of thought. And so you just kind of accept that things are falling apart. You accept that your concept of life is probably not ever going to become something that a lot of people pay attention to, and you may never succeed at making it happen, making it a reality, and you just kind of chill. You go from being that fierce uh, center of the storm right outside of the eye to being that ultra calm eye of the storm. You just go from 150 mile an hour winds down to nothing. And so when you rise to this level, then you just kind of accept that things are falling apart, accept that things are imploding. You may even begin to look forward to it. Uh, and you may just make it a point to learn as much as you can during that implosion. It may be a slow societal implosion. You may make it a point to teach as much as you can during that implosion so others can see how and why things are falling apart. It's kind of like one of the first things they teach you in science class, that if you want to learn what a frog is made of, you don't just put a hammer to it and squash it all up. Okay, but but you take it apart very neatly. You gas it to death. You put it in a bag and you tie it to your exhaust pipe and you kill the frog with exhaust. But you want to keep them in one piece so you can take them apart neatly and see what he's made of. Another example that was used in science class in one of my lower grades in elementary school was a radio. You wouldn't know what a radio is made of. You don't smash the radio. You get a screwdriver and you pull it apart very neatly, and make sure you unplug it first. But and that's how you figure out what it's made of. And so, as society falls apart, it may fall apart piece by piece, bit by bit, and as it neatly falls apart, and you can learn what it's made of, what made it function in the past, what things did you take for granted in the past that are now going away and imploding and falling apart. Okay, and so this 12th sphere of thought just kind of focuses on implosion, on destruction, not necessarily causing it, but definitely learning from it and teaching from it and thinking about it and trying to predict it and so forth. But this 12th sphere of thought, it's like the black hole of the mind. Just like that, the eye of the storm, the storm sucks in a lot of moisture and sucks in a lot of energy, and that might be what that calm eye of the storm is actually doing. Um, but it's not forcing its elements out. It's just kind of taking everything in. And I know I said that about the other 10 parts of the mind, but in this case, it's not just taking it in the sense of learning. It's also taking in uh, emotional energies and other types of energies, and just it's kind of focused on just calming down and letting things fall apart. So this fourth apocalyptic course, this 12th sphere of thought in the mind, um, they can lead to the death of masculine authority. If you can imagine Dave Chappelle all of a sudden just going silent and saying, fuck it all, you don't like what I have to say, I'm through with it, and just chilling and not trying to get people to get over their extreme emotion, extreme sensitivity, and just say, okay, that's how you are, I accept it, fuck it, don't, just leave me alone, and if you can imagine a dictator like Bashar al-Assad finally saying, hey, look, people are never going to get it. I may as well stop killing them. They're just never going to get it. Uh, and just maybe even retiring. Um, and then, the social and government systems that we've gotten so accustomed to having in place, they just go silent. The machines go silent. Uh, but let me see. So there's that, and I know it's getting kind of hard to explain, but I think you're going to see what I'm talking about in the very near future in society, and I don't expect these videos that I'm making to what do you say to go viral immediately, and who knows, I may get a very low number of views for a considerable amount of time, but then there's going to come that point where so much is going wrong so quickly in society that somebody remembers that this video is there, or they do a search and it brings up this playlist, and they pay attention. Like, okay, um, this guy knows a lot about what's happening here. Um, One of the Psalms, man, I can't think of which one it is, but it says, this poor man with his wisdom saved the city. I'll have to find that again. But I might be that poor man who, with his wisdom, saves the city. So, my next note says that, this 12th sphere of thought is probably developed most often between the ages of 30 and 80. Of course, that's a pretty wide range of years there. And I would imagine that if you haven't developed it by the age of 60 or 70, you live to be 75 or 80, and you see the sorts of things that are happening in the world today, that it's very likely that you are going to develop this part of the mind. But even as God, with the capital G, is the only being in the universe who has always had that God element to his mind, I think that there are actually more than one death angel. There's one primary death angel, but I think that all of the death angels, 7 of them, actually are the only beings that God. Let me say that again. these 7 death angels that are part of God's regime. So I believe that there are 7, and any other death angels that come into existence, that God brings into existence. And that's a kind of a long explanation, but I won't go there. But they're the only beings that have this 12th element of the mind from the point of birth, from the time that they come into existence. And others who develop this part of the mind develop it pretty late in life. Let me see. So, one thing that I will say quickly is that this 12th sphere of thought. It does have some interesting properties of its own, and you can actually spread it. You can have it without realizing it, and you can spread it without realizing it. You can't just have your godhood jump over to somebody else. But this 12th sphere of thought, you can unwittingly pass it on to someone else. I'm not going to get into how, but you can. And I think that right now there are millions of people who have already developed it, and it's not like the 11th element of the mind, where very few people develop it. And because it's easier to develop, and because you don't have to develop that 11th zone first, because of properties that I could take hours to explain, but I'm not going to. You can spread this deathly consciousness, I'll call it, to millions of people, and I believe that millions of people already actually have it, and that it's just a matter of something happening in society, or a number of things happening in rapid succession, such that everybody has a wake-up call all at once, and then everybody just gets on that level of thought all at once, and I kind of see us moving toward that sort of thing. And so I say a lot about God being a God of necessary evils. I tell people all the time, like I said several times in this series, that my favorite verse is Isaiah 45:7. I form light and create darkness. I make good and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. Well, so actually, before I leave off from talking about that 12th sphere of thought, let me also say this, that I believe that God has designated different agencies, different entities in this world to basically embody some of these spiritual phenomena that I'm talking about. So, so that first apocalyptic course and that rationale that corresponds with it, I believe that that level of function tends to manifest at the local government level, and the conceptual thought and that second apocalyptic horseman, they correspond. I said they each correspond with a number of different things, but the state level government, and then this God element, this 11th sphere of thought, the third apocalyptic course, among other things, also corresponds with the U.S. government, and then this 12th sphere of thought, this destructive element, this black hole, if you will, it actually corresponds with, you might have guessed, the United Nations. The United Nations actually doesn't have any real governing power, any real enforcement mechanisms. They can enforce some things, but not an awful lot. Not as much as a government can enforce. And so the UN is kind of a black hole of political power that kind of, part of what they do is tamp down these dictatorial energies that some national leaders have, and they create international norms, and so that goes right back to what I said about just sucking in all of that aggressive energy, that live wireness, and so I actually do believe that these four apocalyptic horsemen, uh, that they correspond with the four most powerful parts of the mind, and that some of how they manifest is through four different levels of government: local government, state government, the U.S. government, and the UN. Uh, and I think that as things begin to fall apart, that the UN might actually become a bit more relevant. Uh, I'm not sure exactly how, but I'm watching to see. And but then, and this is really getting long and kind of difficult to try to explain in a short time, but I'm going to keep going nonetheless. So, the 12th Spear of Thought is actually the final Spear of Thought, like I said earlier, but then this, for lack of a better term, I'll say the 13th element or 13th phase, it is actually a restructuring slash reuse of the 11th Spear of Thought. So you're basically going back the other way now. So at the 12th level, 12th spear, you're thinking about destruction. You're thinking about the uh, concepts in the universe that have led to destruction in the past and could lead to destruction in the future if God didn't do things the way He does them. And on a smaller level, on a lower level, thinking about the things that have led to destructions of societies and things that could lead to the destruction of current U.S. society or other nations across the world. Okay, possibly, the entire world society. Not that everyone's going to die, but the systems that we have counted on could die. The positive conditions that have supported life could die, and we may have to hurry and scurry to fix some major problems. But anyway, there's that death that doesn't lead to total annihilation and the death of a system. And then this 13th Spear of Thought actually is one that focuses on preventing destruction. So that kind of goes to God. So God knows the sorts of terrible things that can happen in eternity once He sets people free from Him, offers them salvation under Jesus Christ for this world, and under an equivalent to Jesus Christ for the world that's to the left of God's throne, light years out, and forming a big triangle in the universe. God here and our world out here. This is my right hand, even if it doesn't look like that on your screen. And then there's this other world, light years out in this way from God's throne, working on both of them, and then He'll eventually spread those two worlds out and cast them further out into the universe, and then start working on two more worlds. But and go through this stuff in 10,000 year cycles. But each of those worlds that He sets free, they're free for eternity. But God knows what kinds of terrible things can happen and how things can fall apart because of people's tendencies. And so I believe He's using what I'll call the immunization concept, where He shoots a little bit of a disease into you so your body learns how to fight it. Well, He's shooting a little bit of a disease, a societal disease, into the world so that Jesus and the 144,000 can learn from all the fucked up shit that happens in the world. And God's probably nudging Jesus Christ with his right elbow, because Jesus is on His right and Jesus' equivalent is on God's left. And God's probably nudging Jesus or nudging this other guy, like, hey, you see all that bullshit happening in the world, in your world down here, or in your world down there? See all that bullshit happening down there? See how fucking stupid people are? Make a plan. Make sure this doesn't happen in eternity, and that kind of thing. And so God actually is has given us leadership at the beginning of this world, and then God backed off and gave us enough rope to hang ourselves, and now He's letting Jesus learn from the fucked up shit we do. Okay, and that's part of a plan of prevention. So, so God has risen above destruction, but He uses destruction to teach a lesson, and then, like Revelation says, "Behold, I make all things new. Make it all again, and this time, don't fuck it up. This time, you got Jesus Christ. Just this time, you got the 144,000. This time, they've got the knowledge they need to maintain order eternally, so forth and so on." Okay, so a lot of what God does is to bring about evil in a controlled fashion, you know, and then order the world after that, set things in order after that, and let people live in peace away from Him. But then God begins to work on two more worlds, and they each have an equivalent to Adam, an equivalent to Eve. You know, there are a few standard activities in each of the worlds that God sets up, but then there's still plenty of latitude for different things to happen. But God is about necessary evils from which Jesus and His equivalent, the 144,000 and their equivalents, learn from. Okay, and maybe I'm overstepping things by saying that the 144,000 are actually learning, because I don't think God actually gives them as much attention as He gives Jesus. Maybe He leaves it up to Jesus to actually teach them. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that Jesus Himself is sitting at God's right hand and learning from God. And God is probably not a very nice teacher. You know, he might be smacking Jesus in the head every so often. I don't know, but I just don't imagine God being nice at all. Um, so, what else have I not already covered? So, oh, so in terms of necessary evil, I gotta say this one. Well, many of us have heard that um, Lucifer was an archangel. Michael and Gabriel are archangels. Uh, each of them had 1/3 of the angels under their authority, uh, and lesser angels, and that Lucifer decided to try to replace God, and Lucifer and her, uh, 1/3 of the lesser angels all rebelled against God, and then Michael and Gabriel, with their lesser 2/3 of the angels, they 2/3 of lesser angels, they fought against Lucifer, and there was a battle in heaven, and then Lucifer gets struck down to the earth, along with the lesser angels, I would imagine. Uh, and that all just seemed too neat to me, that exactly 1/3 of the angels, 1/3 of the archangels rebelled, and exactly 1/3 of the lesser angels rebelled. None of the lesser angels said, "Wait, no, I want to go work under Michael or Gabriel because I'm not going to rebel against God." You know, this whole deal with exactly 1/3 of the management and exactly 1/3 of the lower level employees rebelling is all too neat to me. That looks like a choreographed dance as far as I'm concerned. You know, with Lucifer and the 1/3 being in the middle, Michael and Gabriel being on either side with their lesser angels, all in formation before God's throne, and then all of a sudden they do this periodic dance. That's what it looks like to me. You know, it's just too neat, and so I think that that's just part of the cycle of things that happen in heaven. But I believe that God has more or less employed Satan to tempt. And there are several instances where Satan goes to God and gets permission to tempt this or that one. I've mentioned that earlier in these videos, and so God is a very big part of Satan's tempting. God is actually given permission, and God Himself said He does evil. So there you have it. But let me see. I'll skip that one. Um, I covered that. There's Adam's idiocy. So I have thought to myself how that when God, you know, either sent Satan or allowed Satan to go to the Garden of Eden, and Satan talks to Eve and gets her to eat from the forbidden fruit, the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Meanwhile, there's this tree of life. The forbidden fruit, right smack dab in the center of the garden. The tree of life is clearly off to the side somewhere. And Satan tempts Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. And the whole while, neither Adam nor Eve looks at the tree of life and says, let's go eat of that instead. And it looks to me like things were just kind of swayed in favor of Adam eating the forbidden fruit. God told him not to eat it, but then other circumstances made it more likely that he would than that he wouldn't. The